Tales, everybody. And may I be the first to say, Calon Gareth Happis to you. Are you prepared for a night of chilling stories, terrifying morals, and questionably cheap animation? I bet you are. For tonight, you are welcome to Grizzly Tales for Gruesome Kids, a series of cautionary tales for lovers of squeal. If there is one thing we have over this generation of kids, it's the fact that we have an abundance of shows that were more or less designed to scare the shit out of us into behaving ourselves. If you couldn't watch Goosebumps, this was always the alternative. Grizzly Tales was one of the flag shows of CITV in the afternoons, and still remains popular even if it is just reruns now. However, I always thought this should have been the last show to air at about 5 o'clock, you know, sort of ended on a high. But it was always the first show to air. I guess they just wanted to get the scary stuff out of the way so they can have Rosie and Jim Jungle Run and My Parents Are Aliens as a way to calm the kids down. The series was made up of a collection of stories adapted from the book series of the same name, also with ghostly tales for ghastly kids and fearsome tales for fiendish kids. Sadly, they never adapted any stories from freaky tales for fucked up kids or spooky tales for shitty kids, but we won't hold that against them. The episodes themselves were about 10 minutes long, all told by Uncle Grizzly, voiced by Nigel Planer. That's right, Neil from The Young Ones.
We sow the seed. Later, nature grows the seed. Then we eat the seed. Then we... Right, now shut up!
He's like the Crypt Keeper if he were alive and he didn't have his vocal cords stretched out on piano wire. And as you've probably noticed, they used two different types of animation here. The story portions were in traditional hand-drawn, while the stuff with Grizzly was stop-motion. And if there is anything that Gravity Falls has taught us, it is that stop-motion can be used to create absolute terror.
Do you still want to know what's in this jar? Shan't tell you.
Okay, maybe it was scarier when I was a kid, but it still makes me shiver uncomfortably. Ooh. The animation, as you'd have noticed, is considerably simple and cheap. Not that it looks bad, but they do tend to use the same character models and settings for the episodes, just with different alternatives.
And Nigel smirked as the spider's lights went out for good. Nobody panic, he said briskly. I'm the world's foremost expert on rabies.
I have managed to go through puberty and get my university degree in a matter of a few episodes. Now, if you think the animation itself looks familiar, then that's because it was made by the same people who made Wolves, Witches and Giants with Spike Milligan. What an interesting contrast! To go from doing a show with one of the founders of British comedy, and then the following year doing a show with someone who helped push alternative comedy even further in the 1980s. Now, the tales themselves were certainly what you would call cautionary tales. I mean, you had the morals like always try and keep a civil tongue, or don't be fussy with food, or else karma will kick in and set you right. Or sometimes it followed myths and superstitions. For example, you know the old saying that if you sleep with your mouth open, you swallow 100 spiders? Well, here's Grizzly Tales' interpretation of that.
The ghostly spiders floated on the breeze and were wafted into his bedroom, where the windy fingers dropped them one by one into that gaping, snoring hole in the middle of Nigel's face. His chest was tight, as if he had a bad cold, and it hurt him when he breathed. Where had that spider come from? And why was something tickling his throat? Surely not.
Jesus.
Hell, they weren't even afraid to kill off the kids who misbehave.
And when his parents rushed in, all they found was a puddle of water.
Sometimes there wasn't even a moral. They were just looking for an excuse to scare the shit out of the kids.
She stopped at the door and removed her head to rest her tired shoulders. Then she just disappeared.
But when you think about it, sometimes the worst characters in this show were the parents. It wasn't like they were cruel themselves, but their reactions to their child's disappearance was often seen as the best thing to have happened to them. It's like they were thinking, our son may be dead? Huh. Well, I guess we can start work on turning his bedroom into that S&M dungeon, can't we, love? You're sick, man. You're fucking sick. As the series did progress, you did notice that the animation suddenly looked even cheaper, if that were even possible, when it went to digital animation. And this, sadly, does affect the enjoyment of the show. Yeah, the stories themselves were still their usual creepiness, but the paper-like quality of the later episodes just didn't seem to meld well with the stories, and it therefore lost some of its charm. Also, Uncle Grizzly was removed as well, even though Nigel Planer was still doing the narration. Whether this was due to the cutbacks that CITV had to face during most of the 2000s, or whether it was, surprisingly enough, the original stories had to be slimmed down in order to fit the time slot, and they just wanted to get as much as they possibly could into it while making some sacrifices on the way, I don't know. But regardless, this was around the time where I started to lose interest in CITV and Grizzly Tales. But I still look back at the earlier stuff and, yeah, it may look cheap and sometimes a little bit cheesy, it still manages to be creepy. The stories are still engaging and the morals are enough to make children think their actions through. If you haven't seen any of Grizzly Tales for Gruesome Kids, or if you are just a fan of something like Goosebumps, I would recommend it. It's a piece of children's entertainment that does stay with you. This is BronyDan saying, Nostar, and sleep tight.